Welcome to Therapy, Tech, and Takeout, where humor meets healing with bite-sized chunks of wisdom and techie tips. I'm Toni Teixeira. I am a therapist, entrepreneur, ethics nerd, and recovering overthinker.
Hi, Tony. I'm Jackie, your co-host, Jackie Toll, and I am an entrepreneur, tech investor, and low rent stand-up comedian. Today, I'm so excited. We're talking about an LA Times opinion piece called "The Human Brain Doesn't Learn, Think, or Recall Like AI: Embrace the Difference" by Ido Geffen. And he's a
Mhm.
PhD candidate, or at least was when he wrote this article. So I'm excited to get into that, but I'm more excited to know, Tony, what's up with you this week?
Good question. Well, I'm really excited about this topic because I think it like brings together our specialties and what we're doing. So I'm like really interested in what you think. This week, I'm so excited because one of my daughters is in from Atlanta, and my other daughter's going to be coming in from Washington, D.C., and we're having an engagement party for one of my daughters. So I'm
That's
just super
awesome.
excited about having them just kind of together in the same place and a little bit of the extended family. So it should be a lot of fun. I'm in my happy place. How about you? A little birdie told me there's a special occasion coming up.
Oh yes, another year goes on the slate at the end of the
Yeah.
week. But I am and I'm excited. I'm gonna be up in Tennessee. I'll see my oldest daughter who's up there in school,
Hmm.
and I actually haven't seen her since like before summer started. I can't like
Mm.
maybe around Mother's Day or something. So I'm like super excited. It's like the longest time I think we've gone without seeing each other. So
Wow. Well, happy
yeah,
birthday. I heard you like kind
thank
of
you.
minimize that. Oh, another year.
No, I'm excited. This seems to be like a birthday season. I have a friend who, her birthday is at the end of Oc or at the beginning of October. My friend who lives up in Boston is the end of September. So it's kind of like everybody, I kick it off and then everybody kind of follows.
Mhm.
So, and I love birthdays. Birthdays, I used to work at a place where we went like to an unhealthy degree celebrating each other's birthdays, like massive themes. I would be in the office at like 3 a.m. decorating for like hours.
That sounds like so much
Like,
fun.
it was like
That's
wild. I had like way too much energy for those types of unpaid creative projects back then as
yeah.
well.
World is so different now. You work remotely, right?
Yep.
Most, yeah, and I'm remotely. My coworkers, my husband, I don't have anyone throwing me birthday parties like that during the workday. So
I know it's
that's
so
really
much,
cool.
it's so different for sure. It makes
Yeah.
you I guess it kind of that leads into our topic a little bit because it definitely
Yeah.
um kind of leads to the I think some of the reasons why people are reaching out to AI to fill different like engagement sort of functions in their lives and things like that.
Yeah.
Um But I thought this was really interesting because like it definitely t this article talked about like the idea of like um historical harm that has been caused by like saying, oh, like the brain is like this or people like are like this and then applying that to children from a young age and like
Hmm.
the missteps that that can cause. And like I definitely can understand that. But like, are there any examples of that that kind of like jumped out to you that like this is from a historical and like scientific perspective so much better? So I'd love to hear if there's an interesting.
Yeah, I mean, the brain being like a computer goes like way, way, way back. And that's always been the comparison, like, there's input and output as if it's like kind of really simple that way. And that also sets like the harm is that like that sets up a standard for what the brain is supposed to look like. So people who are neurodivergent or on the spectrum, they don't fit into that. They don't fit into that model. That's not how they process information. Input and output doesn't look that way. So the harmful piece is that it sets kind of a standard or a view of the brain that's not only harmful for people who are neurodivergent, but in terms of how we create, how we discover, how we do things. If the thought is that everything has to be perfectly computed and there's an output that is with no mistakes and is like kind of absolutely perfect and it's like, oh, there it is, then that really dismisses the process that happens when you're discovering or creating, or I mean even writing. It doesn't even have to be a big discovery, but like even putting an essay together, it disvalues the process, and it only values what the outcome looks like, and not all of us are going to have the same outcome or the same process.
I think that's
Yeah.
so interesting. And I loved one of the examples in the article too about we wouldn't have penicillin if it weren't for like sort of the messy scientist who like happened to, like not clean up and then noticed something. Um I I think the place where I come at it from is like I don't disagree, but it's like a yes and kind of situation. I think like you talk about like trying to fit people into a box and like the how neural divergency, especially when you think about from an education standpoint, right? Like you're like everybody learns like slightly differently and has slightly different hooks and things like that.
Mhm.
And I think um there's an opportunity for an AI tool to
Mhm.
develop content in a way that helps attach better and for people, that's like better suited to like their learning styles and like like the things that they're interested in or whatever to kind of get the lessons across. So I think that there's a way that like we can leverage technology to do that. But I think you're right. If all we're focused on is so that they can get higher test scores on the standardized tests, like we're missing a huge piece of it. And I think, we need to have like a more holistic view of what does success here look like. And I think the
Mhm.
article gave that example of like learning the piano, right? You could have somebody who rocks it, like sounds great, kills it on their lessons, but hates every minute of it. And, and then you have the other person who kind of like fumbles around but really enjoys it and
Mhm.
cultivates that appreciation. And again, I think AI can be a tool there, right? Like if I
Mhm.
had a really complex medical condition, I wouldn't want a doctor who was like afraid of AI working on me, right? Like I would want a
Mhm.
doctor who embraced all technologies
Well,
available to try to figure it
uh,
out.
okay. Well, let's talk about this then, because there was they were using AI. I don't know if you know about this. You probably do. To identify skin cancers.
Hmm.
So they fed a lot of pictures of skin cancer. Have you heard about this
No,
kind of study?
not this specific one,
Okay.
no.
So it learned how to find skin cancer. And what it found was that rulers are skin cancer because every photo that they had of the skin cancer had a ruler next to it because they were trying to teach it that it should be, I guess, a certain size.
Right, right.
Uh, so,
Yeah, no, for
so
sure.
we really have to be careful of the expectations that we have. Brains are more likely to dismiss information, I think, that's irrelevant
Yeah.
than, like AI. So using it as a tool, I want to make sure that, I wouldn't want a doctor to be afraid of using AI, but at the same time, I would want people to
Yeah,
check on what it
for
is,
sure.
right?
For
That a
sure. Like good or bad, right? Like
Yeah.
I would love to have AI also run through like whatever imaging screening or whatever, see if it has a different opinion than the human being. Maybe that gets escalated to another human being. But like, yeah,
Mhm.
I think that there is, but at the same time, like, I think that there's an opportunity for these tools to find things or to recognize things that we would miss, right? Because we're imperfect creatures as well. So
Mhm.
I think it is finding that, the balance and having humans there, right? I see AI having a big role in education, but I don't see it in lieu of the teachers, right? I think it can be leveraged by the teachers so that they can focus on other things that perhaps if they're really focused on you getting the test scores on the standardized tests, they can't spend as much time teaching you how to be a person in the world. Like those are skills that really teachers like try to work in, but it's not something covered on their curriculum and things like that. So I'm optimistic that um like there I think that I agree. There's definitely a difference between how AI and the brain or any computer and the brain work.
Hmm.
And I think celebrating that messiness is part of the fun. How do
Yeah,
you
that was
think,
actually my question to you was what do you think that like tech, the tech world though feels about, especially that phrase, the messiness of it all.
and it's interesting, right? Like I think we all there's definitely the move fast and break things mentality, right? The But I think there's a place where um reasonable people will still are making those decisions. Like I know I looked at an acquisition of a company and they were doing they did like emergency alerting, right? And so um like you can only cut so much from that before you're having like a really bad impact on like people's lives and like massive like dangerous implications. Like you have
Hmm.
to plan to reinvest and be like strategic because it is a long-term sort of thing and public trust is super important and things like
Hmm.
that. And I think, but in like the startup space, I think that it is more, um, like you do have a lot more companies that are in that move fast and break things, which I think makes sense from a tech perspective at some level for some applications. But I think when you get to be like a gigantic platform, you really do have to reassess your role in the world, right? Your role is perhaps like not to encourage genocide. Like,
Hmm.
like there should be like things that you're looking at that isn't just like how do we innovate? How do we like move fast and who cares about we'll fix the consequences in the next round. Like
Hmm.
as you get bigger, those consequences become exponential. And I think people are starting to have more serious conversations about
Hmm.
that. But I don't think that you can also count on tech to be the regulators of themselves either. So,
Good point.
I think we need people making, rules around the tech practices like we have around medicine and like we have around other things. Like there could be regulatory bodies that are non-governmental and things like that, but there should be something. And it's really lacking there. And I think there are people that would argue that's what's fueled its growth to some extent, and maybe that's true, but I think it's time to reassess, right?
Hmm.
Like maybe medicine spread because we didn't like have that many people that like credentialed doctors and people went out and tried stuff and learned and talked about it. Yeah, I mean, maybe, right? I'm not like clear if that's like actual true, but
Hmm.
I think that it's time to like get more reflective because it touches everything and it's kind of like plastics, right? Like,
Yeah, they're
it touches
everywhere,
you
right?
like in every
Right.
way when you're not thinking about it. And I think tech is really similar to that.
Right. I mean, AI has been around for a long time, but the generative AI looks very different and it is moving very quickly, maybe quicker than we really understand and
Yeah.
what the impact of that might be. I don't know if we really know what the impact is going to be yet. Um, but it's certainly having, this article is really interesting in that it was talking about that learning piece and how it's getting used for students who are using it to write essays and to do things like that, and they're missing out on the
Oh
process,
yeah.
which is a creative process and a learning and growing kind of process. And the way our brains work is we actually need mistakes. We need information that doesn't work so we can write ourselves. We can create new neural pathways when we need to shift and change. I mean, a very basic example is babies are born with actually too many synapses, too many neural connections, and the growth of the brain is about pruning, not building more. So, like a baby, you've seen a weird, how babies weirdly will try to grab something and their hand like
Yeah.
goes all over the place. And that learning process of doing that and the connection to the eye and how that works and the what's firing in the brain they're able to get smoother and smoother in that grabbing process because they had the experience of actually doing it incorrectly, giving the input to their eyes and to their neural system. Pruning happens in the brain, and then they create a response that's cleaner over time. We're like essentially getting rid of all of that by showing people here's point A and here's point B. And we're putting all the what happens in the middle in a black box. And you're not going to get the experience of being in the black box and seeing how that's being created or having the internal experience of creating that. So the model is I think bad because just it's generic as a model, but it's also saying we're not going to value all the stuff that happens in the middle. We're just going to value the output, kind of like we would praise the child who plays the piano really well, but she hates it. He or she hates doing that.
Right.
That's not, that's the measure of success, and rather than the kid who loves the process, um, and doesn't care that they're making mistakes, and that's fun. That feels like that should be successful too.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
What do you think the role is? So, like, I get, especially, but I think it's probably applicable to kids all the way down too. But like, the idea of you need actually that reflection on the mistake to identify it and try to figure out how to not do it the next time. And I think that like perhaps when you're learning how to move your arm, that's all happening in your brain, that comparison to an expected
Yeah.
outcome and like but I think that societally perhaps we're not great at reflection, which
Mm,
probably impacts our ability to learn from our
mhm,
mistakes or, even like missteps or things that we could just improve on in general. Is there something
mm,
that you recommend to help people get better at
mhm.
reflection?
Yeah. So when you talked about that, I thought, well, like the sets of people that do that really well are scientists and mathematicians. Reflection is actually part of the process. What went well? What didn't go well? How can I change just one variable next time? Because you don't want to change all of them, so that I know when I'm getting when when I'm getting the answer to this, that it's this variable and not 100 that I change, right? So mathematicians, scientists, really good at that. And for like people who aren't mathematicians and scientists who wouldn't think about, let me just change one variable, because they might get like really invested in that information, I think is curiosity. I think if we live in a space where we're curious about our own brains and about what it is we're doing and what the outcome was, and curious about our own behavior instead of beating ourselves up about our behavior, having feelings about the feelings about the feelings about what we're doing. But reflection really works best in that, when we're in that curiosity mode, and that's mindfulness. Mindfulness can really put us in the space where we're more apt to be curious so that we can test things out
Yeah.
and be with the process instead of being with the outcome. Was that kind of your question
Yeah,
about
no, I
reflection
think
in
that
our
that's really
society?
helpful because I think that yeah, and I love that you led with like the mathematicians and the scientists, and I think that was one of the things I loved about math growing up, right? There was like a right answer there, and you could go backwards and like prove that you were right or know that you were wrong. And it was pretty like clear. When you got to
We're
English and other things, it became less clear.
we're we're so different, and if I can take a moment to reflect with you, can I?
Yeah, I'd
Yeah.
love that.
Yeah, it's just in this moment thinking about how different we are. And I think we've talked about that before. And you're in a space where you really like the outcome and you like knowing what the answer is. And I was thinking, wow, I'm so different than that. So of course then I became curious, like I am right now, like, wow, I'm really curious about um people who are like yourself, really want to know what the outcome is to something and like have the answer, and that feels really good. And whereas I feel sometimes when I have the answer I'm like, well, then what? So, and I think that keeps me in the space of curiosity. And like, I loved English. I loved being able to create something, and there was no right or wrong answer. I love being a therapist because everybody's so unique and different. And for me, getting the answer feels like so empty. So I feel bereft, like, well, then what happens?
Right. I love
And you
that.
feel like that's a great ending point. That's my
Right. Next
terminal
problem.
point.
Yeah. That's
Yeah.
so interesting. I think, and I loved too how, but your comparison of how, like, for in those places, it's baked into the process, but then also feeling like less connected to that process in my like real life and seeing that also reflected in people who I know who are like mathematicians and um actuaries and some of those things where they're very
Hmm.
statistical or science based. So it's interesting to think too, even if your brain is wired like that in work, it might not necessarily be like that for the
Hmm.
rest of your life. Like you might not necessarily carry it over. But I love the idea
Yeah.
that you don't like getting to the answer. I think I have to push myself to be okay with that.
Hmm.
Like,
Well, you know what? I'm not sure. I don't. It's not like the answer. It's like, oh, what are all the answers? Like,
yeah.
wow! It's like going into a garden of one of those wildflower gardens. Ooh, which one can I look at next? Because there are. I like to think of having the multiple. There's a multitude of answers, a multiplicity of answers. And that actually feels kind of yummy to me. Like,
Yeah.
ooh, there's more than just one answer. Nobody's wrong. We all get to be right in some ways.
I love that you said that. And one of the things I've been, even when I've been using AI lately, I've been actually asking for is like counterpoints and counter arguments to everything. Like have it like help
Oh,
with the like, oh, and again, it's not so much that it for me, I don't find myself being like, that's dead on, but I find myself being like, that helped me think of something that's tangential to it. Um
it's actually helping you in the process
It is. It's like a
of
tool
your
in the
own.
process, I think. But like, you do see those times, like you get to see the articles about like the attorneys that file briefs that like were clearly totally written by AI and nobody read it. And it's like, that's a
Yeah.
problem. Like we still
Yeah.
need people. Like, I think that's where it gets, I think thinking about AI as a person in
Hmm.
any way, that's where it becomes problematic. So either as a brain or as like as a person or, like we still need people.
We still need people. That's true. I wonder what our listeners think about this topic. I would
Yeah,
love to invite,
definitely.
yeah, invite discussion about that. And if other people think that the model itself is can be harmful in
Yeah.
how we talk about the brain and how we talk about people. Yeah.
Yeah, I'd love to hear. I'm sure people have some interesting anecdotes or experiences around that. So I'd love to hear those. I find that stuff so interesting. I
Mhm.
also just want to share on this topic, if anybody else appreciates this kind of thing. I saw that Fred Armisen, I don't know if you're familiar with him as a
Yeah, I
comedian,
know
but
him just fine.
he has a record coming out, like an LP, um, that is sound effects. It's like 101 sound effects, and they're
Mhm.
just random strange sound effects like people cheering for an encore, stomping their feet for an encore in some other country or whatever. But like I really thought of him as I was going through this article and getting ready for our conversation because I was like, how interesting and creative to just be like, I miss those. It came from he missed the soundtracks of Halloween sound effects that like he had as a
Yeah.
kid, where it would have all the spooky sounds and stuff. And he was like, why don't I just make one that's like of things I want? And I'm like, that is awesome. So
Hmm.
there's a little piece of art, people
Hmm.
out doing messy and interesting things that
Yeah,
I just wanted to throw out
just for
there.
fun, just
Yep.
because.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, love that.
I think
Thank you
that's
for
one of the
that.
things about art that's just so cool. Like,
Yeah,
but well, thank you so much for your time, Tony, and I really
thank
appreciate it.
you.
And thank you so much to our listeners. Till next week, we will talk soon.
Talk soon. Thank
Bye.
you.